Welcome, horror spotters, to my top 10 houses of Halloween Horror Nights 29 at Universal Studios, Florida. Let's count them down. Number 10, Nightingales, Blood Pit. I always enjoy trying themes I've yet to experience, so Nightingales had me interested in the Roman theme. However, it was my least favorite house of the year for two reasons. It was both repetitive with the sets and the costumes. It had a lot of shirtless Roman dudes, and the awful monsters couldn't even manage to jump scare me. The only highlight ended up being a giant lion puppet. Number 9, Graveyard Games. A favorite of many this year, it seems, but for myself, a graveyard theme is relevant for Halloween events, so you're going to have to do something that really impresses me before I even set foot into the house. Graveyard Games actually managed to do that with the premises of teenagers vandalizing the graveyard so the spirits are unleashing their revenge on them. However, while detailed throughout the house with an amazing initial scene, I found it repetitive and unimaginative. The spirits reminded me more of zombies than anything else, although the gory detail of the murdered teens was impressive. Number 8. House of 1,000 Corpses. The only IP I had no knowledge of, but I still enjoyed the house nonetheless. The movie comes from the mind of Rob Zombie, which is twisted, to say the least. The amount of detail in this house is what impressed me the most. I only had time for 2 runs, and this certainly wasn't enough to take it all in. I seriously had no idea what was going on, but it just didn't matter. Number 7. Stranger Things. My love for the series is the only thing that saved this house from being even lower on the list. For a house that was my favorite event last year, this fell hard to meet my anticipation. Before even going into the house, I was worried since they had included both seasons 2 and 3, and my concerns were warranted. The season 3 section was about 1/4 of the house and felt so vague. Season 3 contained fantastic scenes such as the Mind Flayer and arcade scene. However, you were only experiencing the highest of highlights from the season. Coincidentally, Season 3 felt like it robbed Season 2 from repeating the design of the house from last year, which generally felt like you were experiencing the entire season. Both seasons just felt so broken up, hopping around scene to scene. The casting of the scare actors last year was one of the highlights, but this didn't seem to be a priority this year. While all the sets were very detailed, there was, however, one scene from Season 2 that has to be mentioned. Hopper is with Elle, while she is closing the portal to the Upside Down, was pathetic, with mannequins suspended with clearly visible wires. Compared to last year's house, this was a letdown. Number 6. Jordan Peele's Us. Us was based on the hit movie from earlier this year, with Jordan Peele actually working with Universal to recreate the film. It excelled in doing just that, but failed with the scares. After the first run, I felt like I had had a bad run, but after 3 run-throughs, I still felt that way. The scares just weren't effective, but the sets and atmosphere more than made up for it. Number 5. Killer Clowns from Outer Space. Based on the 1980s cult classic, this house did an outstanding job of recreating the movie with accurate sets, costumes, and puppets. The most notable being the Clownzilla from the film's climax. Even before entering the house, the ice cream truck from last year's Scare Zone was available for pictures with Shorty. The maze begins in the streets and ends in the famous circus tent spaceship. However, there was a lack of notable scenes, such as Lookout Point, which led to my only disappointment of this house. The scent of popcorn and cotton candy, along with interactive buttons, added another level of immersion. All in all, this was a wonderful tribute to the movie. However, it was one of the less scary houses of the year. Let's hope the sequel that has been in development hell for years finally gets made. Number 4. Universal Monsters. The greatest tribute ever in haunted house form. From one room to the next, it jumps from one Universal classic monster movie to another. One would think this would be confusing, but it wasn't. One would think this would hurt the quality throughout, but it didn't. Designing and decorating so many different rooms must have been a massive challenge that paid off in every way. Even if you're not a fan of the classic Universal monsters, you'll come to realize how much knowledge you have of them as they are a part of pop culture. You may even end up buying a Blu-ray box set of the movies to enjoy. Number 3. Yeti, Terror of the Yukon. Sometimes, not much needs to be said about something so excellent. Yeti falls into this category for me. The sets made you feel like you were walking through a blizzard in the middle of Canada. The giant Yetis were all over the place, scaring you while attacking the poor lumberjacks. The carnage unleashed on them was shown in great detail with deformed faces and an impressive effect where a Yeti actually punches through the stomach of one of the lumberjacks. Number 2. Deaths of Fear. The theme of Deaths of Fear is what made it for me. As a deep sea mining installation that actually makes you feel trapped in the house. While the creatures were a little repetitive, they more than made up with the scares. The design of the infected workers was excellent. Deaths of Fear managed to make me want to escape the house as fast as possible because of how creepy it felt inside. However, at the very same time, I never wanted to leave because of how beautiful everything there was to look at. Number 1. Ghostbusters. Let's start off by saying, if you need scares in your haunted house type attraction, then Ghostbusters is not for you. The sets are not going to creep you out, and the only scares you're going to have are from some jump scare ghost puppets. With that out of the way, this house brought me so much joy from start to finish on all 4 of my runs. Growing up with the movies as a kid and now experiencing them in a completely new way was fantastic. The actors were wonderfully casted and on point the entire time. Seeing the famous firehouse gave me chills, only to enter to find a improv-only Janine that was the highlight of all of HHN 29. Every scene was so well designed to allow a near-perfect run every time. My only complaint is that the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man was done with a projected face instead of practical effects. Although considering all the effects in the rest of the house, I was able to let it pass. Ghostbusters is my favorite HHN house of the 3 years I have attended. So that's the list. Everyone's going to have a different order, with some being completely different than mine. Although this always makes it interesting to see how someone else's opinions can vary person to person. Also, keep in mind that the 10th ranked house this year, as far as set design and detail, is still better than 90% of the regional haunted house attractions out there. As far as the event this year overall, it was one of the weaker years, my least favorite. The houses, and even more so the scare zones, were just not as impressive. The entertainment was actually one of the highlights this year, with the Academy of Villains, Altered States, and the fountain and projection show of Halloween Marathon Mayhem being a must-see. So this brings us to the end of HHN 29 and Halloween coverage as a whole for 2019. Make sure you check out the Horror Spotting 2019 playlist for all spooky things we did this year. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe. This has been Alex. See you next time.